Hey, hermano.
Hola, mi hermano, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien. Y muy contento para estar contigo hoy. Qué bien, ¿eh?
So good to see you. Time
How?
flies. It seems like yesterday that you were in Los Angeles and we were at Cafe Gratitude talking about this book that you were gonna write. And now it's a worldwide success. So for those who are listening, Oscar Serrallach is an amazing doctor who lives in Mullumbimby in Byron Bay in Australia, paradise on earth. Has a beautiful family. He is an incredible doctor, and he's one of the world most experts in everything related to pregnancy and postpartum, but not from the classic point of view of checking the position of the baby to see how it's going to come out, but way more than that. And it's so good to see you, Oscar.
It's great to see you, Alejandro. I always love our interactions and sharing information. It's a real joy.
Good. So the reason I wanted to talk to you is because there's a lot of women now that are really scared, and they're going to have a baby and they have to go to the hospital, and we all imagine what that is like. I mean, we can see it in the news, it's mayhem. And everybody's scared of, if you don't have it, if you get it, the coronavirus there. And so I wanted to talk to you and ask you, how is the coronavirus affecting that specific population of pregnant women and new mothers of newborns, and what to watch for, and does the virus affect them more than usual because of pregnancy and childbirth and breastfeeding? What's the story?
Well, the amazing thing with this coronavirus is that mothers are not at increased risk. During pregnancy, you're not at increased risk from coronavirus. And amazingly, there doesn't seem to be infection that's passed on to the baby via the placenta. And so, there are a number of cases of mothers getting coronavirus during pregnancy and needing to have be monitored and those kind of things, and no harms to the baby. And mothers often can do very well sort of during this. So I think the important point, Alejandro, is that mothers are not at an increased risk. When you have a look at the figures of who gets affected and who ends up in ICU, it's not babies, it's not young children. So I have a lot of mothers also who have young families who are very worried about the impacts of this, and it's not an increased time of risk. And so I think what I'm sort of seeing with my practice is a lot of mothers, mothers care incredibly about everything, including their families. And pregnancy brings up so many things anyway in terms of vulnerabilities and what have you. And so I think just this the pandemic has brought up so much on so many levels for many people. And during a pregnancy, the things that I'm seeing very often come up are not only about, am I going to be okay in my family, but also, what about the hospital? I need to go to the hospital. Is the hospital a safe place? And we know one of the most important things for a pregnant mother and a mother early on with a child is a sense of safety. And so, I think it's really important to try to support that as much as possible. I'm not too sure what the situation is in the United States, but in Australia, if you're birthing in the hospital, you're only allowed to have one person in the birth room with you, which is really tough, especially if you're expecting a bigger team. You want to, perhaps your partner and a doula and other friends and support people there, to be restricted to one person. That brings up a lot of angst and anxiety, I think. And so, but to come back to your question in terms of risk, it's mothers are not at increased risk. There was some question about, does COVID-19, if a mother gets it, lead to maybe a premature delivery? But the research actually shows it's more, it causes induction of labor because the doctors are worried about delivering the baby before the mother gets sicker. And so it doesn't actually seem to cause that. So the risks are very low. With breastfeeding, the virus does not pass into the breast milk, and that's quite clear. So, I think that's something really important to, and breastfeeding is actually really important for the baby.
But if a mom has corona and is breastfeeding the baby, it's going to go through the airways. It doesn't necessarily need to go through the breast milk.
No, but this is where you can perhaps pump the breast milk and then use that so that's what's been sort of happening in the hospital system. Is often the breast milk doesn't have to be thrown away, essentially, and it can be used for the baby. Just obviously the contact between the mother and the child, the mother's going to have to isolate for 2 weeks to then sort of recover, which again is a very extremely hard situation for a new mother. But the actual breast milk doesn't contain virus. And
what about does it cross the placenta?
They don't think so. But there was a case study of 4 children. This was in Wuhan in China. 4 children that were born to mothers of COVID-19. One of the 4 babies had to go to special care for several days, but was discharged sort of home pretty soon. And one of the babies actually had IgM antibodies to coronavirus. And so it doesn't look like the coronavirus passes the placenta. IgM doesn't pass the placenta either. And so there was some sort of signaling from the mother to the child for the child to mount its own immune response, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Because that opens the possibility to, other types of communication than what we used to. We always used to, does it cross the placenta? But obviously, information is crossing the placenta, and that makes me, reminds me that not only that kind of information in terms of producing immunoglobulins, but also in terms of the threat that a mother feels or the fear that a mother feels, and how that can be transmitted to the baby and cause the immune system of the baby maybe not only to create immunoglobulins, but also, to imprint some kind of fear and pathway that later on turns into a pattern, right?
Well, exactly. So that signaling between mother and fetus is profound and more profound than we can possibly imagine. And there's a good aspect to it and a not so good aspect to it. So I think this is part of, if a mother's feeling a lot of anxiety during a pregnancy and feeling a lot of anxiety during the pandemic, we as a community, we as professionals need to really support that anxiety, help manage that, because it's not just a nice idea or just reduce a mum's anxiety so she feels better. There are some there are big implications of how that information transmits to the fetus and how that fetus then, through epigenetic change and probably other mechanisms, affects how that fetus or that newborn child then sort of turns up into the world. So I think we need to really supporting mothers is always very important, and I think now more than ever it's become a central part of my work currently, really trying to help reduce anxiety, really have supporting immune systems and nervous system, ensuring sleep. Now, people always forget about how important sleep is generally, but for the immune system, it's one of the most important things you can do is to sleep enough and sleep well. And so this is not rocket science. It's just going back to basics about what the body needs in terms of inputs. If the body feels safe, it behaves safe. if the body feels threatened with all the information that's coming in, it behaves in a more threatened response. And so really supporting
the
that, I think, is key.
the body doesn't respond to the reality of the situation. The body responds to your perception of the situation.
Yeah,
what I wanted more than anything is to, for pregnant women and young moms to first of all, to let them know that the baby is 99.999999999% possibility that it's going to be fine. Am I right in saying that?
Well, yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, the medical world has compared coronavirus to the influenza in terms of the advice that it's giving generically through the hospital system. But we know influenza hurts babies, it hurts mothers. It's a high risk infection for newborns. So influenza is nothing like coronavirus. And the fact that there are very few incidences of even severe illness in newborns or children below the age of 10 is remarkable. But it's something that I think mothers can hold, just going, wow, my child is at really low risk here. My fetus, if I'm pregnant, is at really low risk. And so what I need to do is not only manage my exposure to virus, but also manage my exposure to fear, manage my anxiety if I'm feeling anxious. I think it's imperative that becomes a frontline strategy for any mother who's pregnant, is to really go, I really need to make this a priority, not just remain busy in things that are not that important, or and be much more purposeful in my busyness, as it were, and really just go, okay, I need to really help support my nervous system. I really need to help support my immune system. I really need to make sleep a priority now and moving forward.
And don't forget the digestive system.
Well, the digestive system is where the nervous system and the immune system really meet in a very profound way. So,
and the detox system, right? They all meet all meet in the intestine. What a location.
Well, people don't realize that we interact through the world through the lining of our gut, not through our eyes, not through our thoughts, not through, and many people say that the gut is the second brain. It's probably the first brain in a lot of ways, and you and I know that.
But it's second in the chronological order in which we talk about it, right?
And it's a bit of a black box. How do you even know what's going on with your gut? And so your work, my work, we are trying to shine some light on this, but it's a different perspective, that we interact through the world in terms of what our body's perceiving. Are we safe? Are we under threat? Most of that signaling from the gut to the brain is just sending information about what the gut is thinking is going on, and then the brain reacts appropriately. So,
I am telling everybody that listens that the most important things are not the vitamins and the minerals and the supplements and maybe not even the diet. The diet is right up there, but the most important things are free for people, right? Which are sleeping, as you said, importantly, moving, being outside, breathing fresh air, and being exposed to the sun as much as possible, or at least for a while every day, moving around and exercising lightly, meditating, connecting with your tribe. All those things are free, and they affect the immune system so enormously, right? Even scientifically proven. So, but what are the other things that you're telling your patients, your pregnant patients and your recent moms, to do during this time?
So the number one thing is to limit the amount of information they're getting. So there's not only a pandemic, but an infodemic. So a lot of information. Just be really selective about what information is coming into your home. because I think that can do a lot to help manage the immune system. Sleep obviously is number one. Purpose, I think this idea of our roles, and so as a mother, you have your role as a mother, as a partner, as a friend, as a perhaps a daughter to your parents. You have all these roles, and our purpose we find within our roles. And I think one of the things that I'm really seeing is our roles don't necessarily serve us in a very healthy way often. And so I think just reframing and re-looking at what is our most important role, and to help sort of support that, because if you put the emphasis in the wrong place, and it doesn't align with your purpose and your values, it can cause a lot of friction. And so I think working on that level can really help. Redefining purpose, I think, is something I'm really talking a lot to with mothers. So this idea of what you think is important, but what your body thinks is important may not be the same thing. And so really helping get alignment with that. Like you say, activity is really important. And it's not even about exercising, but being active is very important. Eating the right diet for your body type, and then this whole idea of Crono Nutrition, when you're eating, is also very important. And then connection.
So give me a few pointers on what and when you're eating for pregnant women.
Well, the idea of Crono Nutrition is you don't want to be eating from the moment you wake up to the moment that you go to bed. Obviously, for pregnant mothers, it's not about your maiden diet necessarily. The diet that a pregnant mother often needs to be less simple carbohydrates, more complex carbohydrates. And the best complex carbohydrates I find are the above ground vegetables, with some below ground vegetables as well. And then high quality meats and high quality fats. And mothers tend to do better with eating more food at the beginning of the day and less food as the day goes on. The thing that makes that complicated is the nausea that many mothers experience during, especially first trimester, and sometimes ongoing, that they don't want to eat much in the morning. But it's so it's obviously a lot of support around that. But I think we as a society eat for too many hours of the day. So I don't necessarily do restricted eating hours for mothers, but I think the idea of having parts of the day where you're not eating, I think, can be sort of really useful for the detoxification system, for the hormonal system, and for the nervous system.
Yeah, I explain it in really simple terms so that people can understand, which is this: every system in your body is consuming energy. And if one system is consuming more energy than what what the body needs, then it's going to start stealing it from other functions and systems, right? So if you continuously digesting, and digestion takes a lot of energy. I mean, we all know that after a big meal, you can just, we might as well fall asleep because you're not even thinking, right? So digestion, being in the state of digestion all the time, which is something that we are doing as a species. And that's in my mind, that's one of the main reasons. Of course, the frequency and quantity, and also all the chemicals that are coming in, but the frequency and quantity, and the fact that we are as a species digesting all the time steals from the detoxification system, from the immune system, and every other system.
And also just the amount that we're eating. So when we eat a large meal, it takes a lot more energy, and like you say, steals from a lot of the other systems. I remind my patients that the longest lived people in the world, from Okinawa, they're very religious or very spiritual, and they have a saying before each meal that is not actually spiritual. It is, may you eat to 8/10. So may you eat to 80%. And so what the longest lived people in the world say is, don't overeat. as
Yeah.
as their offering before every meal.
Yeah. Leave the table 20% hungry.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not through some nicety. That's through cultural knowledge going back a long time, that our system does better with that. And these are the longest lived people in the world. So that, you can't sort of deny that there is some wisdom in that.
You cannot argue.
No, and yeah, so we definitely overeat, and I think there's almost a pressure that we need to keep eating as well. And so, if it really suits one of my pregnant mothers, and again, it's a case by case, we'll often do a 14-10, so only eating for 14 hours of the day, and just giving your digestive tract a rest for 10 hours of the day. And that seems to work quite well. And I think you can get a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, not going into an intermittent fasting schedule with more, because women do need to eat frequently when they're pregnant and breastfeeding. So I tell my patients, just skip breakfast or skip dinner often, and with that alone, you're going to improve your health.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea of 3 square meals a day, that hasn't come out of any nutritional science. That has come out of people trying to emulate the royalty of Europe during the Middle Ages, because they were the only ones who could afford, with their staff and everyone supplying food for them, that they would have 3 square meals a day. And so that's become a cultural legacy. So
and now it's a financial web that culture, financial, I mean, it's emotional. It's almost impossible to untangle. One of the not chapters, but one of the sub chapters in my latest book, Clean 7, is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Says who? And then you have to eat like a king, and then the biggest breakfast, and all these theories about, it's just a cultural convenience, financial, because there's, imagine if everybody stopped having lunch every day, the whole industries will go broke, right? So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the whole food production world is set up in a certain way, and it's not out of nutritional science that has been set up. So it's a very cultural backbone that has, and yes, and you and I will definitely try to personalize any dietary advice, because some people do need to. I find about 10% of my mothers, they need to have a lot more carbohydrates, and they need to eat frequently. And so there's not a cookie cutter approach to things, whereas most mothers will do better with a higher fat, lower carbohydrate style of eating, and having significant rest from digestion. And so
far from a cookie cutter approach. Functional medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, they are the opposite of a cookie cutter approach. It's the subtle differences that really give you the edge for optimal health.
Yeah, and as we know with Ayurvedic medicine, with your body type, that when you eat is a key part of Ayurvedic medicine. And so this knowledge has been around for a very long time. It's almost as if we're rediscovering it now as a culture.
What about supplements? What should we tell pregnant women and lactating women? What supplements? Is it business as usual, as you wrote in your incredible book, The Postnatal Depletion Cure? And I have to tell you a little story. My neighbor is an OBGYN, and very nice guy. And I struck a conversation with him one day, and I said, what about, do you have any experience with postnatal depletion? And he's like, what? So I said, yeah, forget about it. And I went home, and I left at his door, I left a copy of your book, and he was blown away.
Well, I thank you. And well, the reality is for an OBGYN, 6 weeks after the birth of the baby, their job is
And
done.
they never see them again.
Yeah.
And you see women for decades after their babies.
Well,
Sometimes.
the legacy can be for many, many years. That's right. So, and in terms of supplements, now there's a really beautiful herb that is fantastic from a coronavirus prevention point of view, but pregnant mothers and breastfeeding mothers can't take this herb called andrographis, just from a safety point of view. And so so the herbs that I tend to use that can be very helpful for modulating the immune system include ashwagandha. That's a great herb, and it can also help on sort of hormonally.
It's okay to take during pregnancy and breastfeeding.
Yeah, it's the safety studies seem to be pretty good. Cultural context, it's been used for a long time. We use supplements like quercetin and glycerated licorice can be sort of quite useful as well. There are formulas that for immune support that that will often sort of make up, but and then vitamin C, vitamin D seem to be very, very useful as frontline supplements. So for during pregnancy and breastfeeding, I'll often use 2 to 3 grams of vitamin C per day, and depending on blood results, usually about 5,000 units of vitamin D per day. And these are very easy things to get. I think there's enough research to show that they're frontline sort of supplements. And the other one that I'll use is zinc. And zinc can be very useful. The research shows it can help reduce the severity of viral infections and the duration of viral infections. And so I'll always use a background amount of zinc. And if someone's got flu-like illness, increasing up to 75 milligrams of zinc elementally for the duration of the viral infection. And that, then there are some sort of secondary things. I always think that fish oil is very important, and there may be some benefit with viral protection, but it's not clear. But I think just in terms of helping with postnatal recovery and also preventing postnatal depletion, I think fish oil is very sort of useful. And then obviously there are some really key minerals like iron and magnesium, calcium also, and then choline. Choline is very important just for healthy liver detoxification and healthy brain chemical regulation. Very simple, safe sort of supplements. And they're often found in a lot of the formulas anyway, sometimes not at a high enough dose, but they're my sort of key players for pregnancy and postpartum. And then there may be some other supplements, but they would be much more on a case-by-case need.
Where do we tell pregnant women and recent moms to get information other than looking at your Instagram and anywhere in your book, of course? Where else are you finding good information about the subject?
Well, unfortunately, there isn't really a field of medicine or research around mothers. So they're kind of like the missing group. Now, we've got pediatrics for children. We've got geriatrics for older people. We don't have a matriatrics for mothers. And so there's not a one place to sort of go to find out information. And so I'm finding
by the way, this is one of the reasons why your book struck a chord around the world, right? Because it's true, you get OBGYN for pregnant women, and pediatrician for the baby, and then the mom, what?
Yeah, well, exactly. And unfortunately, when mothers go to see their primary care physicians, they get treated like maidens or men in terms of what their issues are. And the research is very clear that that mothers are not maidens. They have this upgraded nervous system, this upgraded immune system, and but the research is just starting to gather. And so the first textbook on these kind of issues came out last year, which was sort of great, and it's called the Biomarkers of Postpartum Health, and so and that's mainly looking from the psychiatric sort of point of view by an amazing textbook by Payne and Osborne, but very hard reading, so I wouldn't recommend that for the lay person, but it's just kind of collating a lot of the research around neuroscience, around immunology, around autoimmune risk from a lens of postpartum anxiety, depression, psychosis, and but I've got multiple fields of input. So I don't find there's one go-to place to find where I'm finding information on this. So
are you going to post all the stuff you find for people?
Well, yeah. So this is part of my slow down. I heard a great saying recently: "Slow down to stand up." And so I think a lot of us are slowing down, and then we're really standing up into our calling. And so through my Facebook, Instagram, and I'll be doing a Patreon account at some stage this year just to provide content, and I'll be moving into doing training for mother care workers. So this would be doulas, midwives, nurses, and doctors who are interested in the specifics around this, because I've literally got thousands of articles that I really want to share with people.
It's about time. I'm so happy to hear that.
It's super exciting for me because I love to talk about this and teach and share and then have discussions around this, because I think this is where we all get fed professionally, personally, and I think that information is so liberating for mothers to understand. Okay, I knew there was something going on that wasn't just what I was being told by my doctors or my care providers. And so that acknowledgement is really important, and then the solutions around that. So there's a very interesting idea around this idea of neuroinflammation that mothers experience. And neuroinflammation is just very tiny parts of the brain that have too much electricity through excess chemicals. And these are called sort of cytokines. And they know now that postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression are neuroinflammatory disorders. And so they're not like depression and anxiety in men or maidens, women who haven't had children. These are very specific things. And so postnatal depletion is actually on the spectrum of neuroinflammation at one end, and you have sort of depression at the other end of the spectrum. But when you're dealing with neuroinflammation, the tools that you need are quite different and unique. And so for me, it's really exciting that the research in the last 2 years around postnatal neuroinflammation has gone from one article here to many articles and research papers. And so I coach a lot of my mothers around, without getting too complicated, around the sciences around what neuroinflammation is, what you can do about it, why sleep is so important, because that's the one thing that generally fixes neuroinflammation. And then things like nervous system practices, meditation, chanting, singing, being silent, all these things research has shown to help with neuroinflammation. So these are not just feel-good, nice ideas. This is actually frontline therapies to help manage your medical problems.
Yeah, not that we can discard feel good, because the fact that feel good, there is a whole cascade of chemicals that in biochemicals that allowed that to happen, right?
But feeling good is obviously important on many levels, but I think a lot of mothers discard that as not important, because all it's doing is just it's a nicety. Whereas I try to help reframe it, going, well, yes, you can feel good, but it's actually a medicine as well. How great's that? And to give people permission. Sometimes people just really need permission to do the things that they know are important for them.
Yeah, absolutely. especially when the doctor orders it, right?
Yeah.
So Oscar, and yeah, go.
I was saying a prescription for joy, you know, is sometimes it's just giving people permission to do that. So I'll sometimes do prescriptions of have more joy, allow yourself to be still, you know, and of course it's on a prescription pad. No, they're welcome to take it to their pharmacist and those kind of things. But it's the idea of going, no, this is actually really important. And it's so important, I'm going to write it on a prescription for you.
You actually do that.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Oscar, and you know, one of the things that stuck with me really strongly from our initial conversations many years ago was this issue with iron on postpartum depletion, right? And how some women need intravenous iron to really recover, that you cannot even do it through diet such as the depletion, right? And this can be linger for years, right? So how does iron play a role more specifically with the pandemic?
Well, iron's probably the most important postnatal supplement, and it's a really, really important prenatal supplement or mineral. Everyone thinks iron is important for making red blood cells, and that's its main job. It's one of its jobs, but it's probably its least important job is making red blood cells. So waiting for someone to be anemic before addressing their iron deficiency is, for me, is often too late. Iron's primary jobs are around detoxification and energy production. And so we know iron is really important for catalase. Catalase is an enzyme that's only really used in the liver. It's the largest molecule that the body produces, and catalase, its primary job is as a filter enzyme for things coming from the gut lining. And so iron is really important for gut detoxification. That's its primary, most important role. Its next important role is to make cytochromes, which are really important enzymes mainly found in the liver with for detoxification and energy production also. And so there are many other things that iron does, but I cannot stand seeing mothers who are pregnant who are left slightly anemic. You're only slightly anemic. It's okay. And their doctors aren't addressing their iron deficiency. And research actually shows if you have a ferritin of 75 leading into pregnancy, and 75 is both the units in Australia and in America, you will have less blood loss during your pregnancy than if you have a low iron. And we know that blood loss can be quite critical during the birthing process. And it also sets up, if you have very low iron in the postnatal period, that's going to set you up for a whole lot of issues around fatigue, poor sleep problems, and you'll be more prone to getting depression and anxiety if you have low iron. So again,
now, I think I remember correctly you telling me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that even if your blood levels of iron is fine, there can still be depletion.
Well, yeah, and this is part of the irony of what is a deficiency. So 95% of people have to be in the normal, and so in the normal range. And so if you're not in that bottom 5%, you don't get labeled as being deficient. Whereas the research shows that 25% of women, this is not pregnancy or postnatal, but 25% of women of menstruating age have iron deficiency when they're looking at optimal levels. And so the reference ranges are actually incorrect because they're essentially generated by computers, not by the doctors. And so you've got 20% of the population who's iron deficient who are labeled as iron sufficient. And this is women from the age of 15 to 50 essentially. And so that's a huge portion of the population who have been labeled okay that really aren't okay in terms of their iron levels. And it just shows you that the system is really not geared up to support wellness and have a deeper understanding of some of these key issues. And so, yeah, so iron is the first thing that when I'm seeing a new mother or a pregnant mother, it's like, I need to know as much about you as possible, but what is your iron level today? Because that's the thing we can really help with right here, right now.
And in general, everybody needs iron.
Yeah, it's a key nutrient for sort of so many things. Because our diet is so rich in iron, it's possible that some people have too much iron. This tends to be older men, and so, but I don't see iron overload ever in my pregnant postnatal mothers.
So what kind of iron do you recommend, and how much, and maybe a couple of brand names if you know?
So in terms of supplements, what's interesting is a lot of the iron that's out there is not easy to absorb, and so I tend to go for smaller dose, more easily absorbed iron. So I tend to like iron picolinate or iron glycinate. There are lots of different irons out there, but if you're someone who's quite sensitive as a person and sensitive as a digestive tract, I find my mothers tend to do a lot better with those types of irons. And you don't need high amounts. 20 to 30 milligrams, is sufficient. Recent research shows that you should be taking your iron supplements every second day, not every day. This seems a bit paradoxical, because shouldn't you take it every day? When you take an iron supplement every day, you actually reduce receptor sensitivity, and so it can actually deactivate iron absorption receptors. And so you can absorb less iron from your food. And so and so the important part of that is you're looking at the longer term iron health. And so every second day seems to be a much better strategy for helping increase iron absorption from food. And then you can usually maintain pretty high healthy iron levels just from that second daily sort of supplementation. If you can't get your levels up, I'll often use iron creams and then iron infusions, as you sort of said, just to get back to baseline. And then through diet and then through supplementation, you can maintain your iron levels. I don't have a particular brand that I would recommend in America, just a good, a quality brand. So
you know Floradix. A lot of people like it because it comes with herbs and.
We have Floradix in Australia, and I'm presuming it's the same one, and it's a plant-based iron. So what's interesting is that the digestive tract has receptors for animal iron and plant-based iron sitting side by side. So whether we should be eating meat or vegan, the body's adapted to both. And so the Floradix is plant-based iron, but I often find those sort of products have a lot of sugar or sweeteners to them. They certainly do in Australia, and so you need to drink a lot of the Floradix to replace iron. It might be okay as a maintenance, but not so much as a replacement. So I'm probably a little bit neutral on the Floradix as a frontline supplement. But there are many good brands in America, especially the bigger brands of Thorne and Metagenics. They tend to have really good iron supplements for pregnancy, and then just iron supplements.
Yeah, those companies that you just mentioned, and there's others, Pure and Douglas Labs. I mean, they have so much research behind them, and every time they bring their scientists to the functional medicine lectures, they are so brilliant. I'm really impressed with all these supplement companies that many of which I I buy stuff from, you know.
Yeah, and they've definitely got the research and this and the you know, they're not just trying to sell product; they're trying to sell the best product.
Yeah,
And so I really admire that, you know, because it's a very competitive marketplace. So I really admire trying to bring research that people aren't even aware of into their products.
yeah.
And it, you know, it can make things more expensive, but it makes it a better product. And so, you know, I definitely get that.
Oscar, any last words of wisdom for you know, for the people that we are addressing today, which is pregnant women and new moms?
Well, you know, the thing that I keep coming back to is, you know, the two worst things for a pregnant mother and a new mother are judgment and overwhelm. And so judgment by others, judgment by self, and overwhelm in terms of just too much information, too many tasks, those kind of things. And those two things can really wreak havoc on her nervous system, her mental health, and ultimately her immune system. So I keep coming back to trying to help reduce judgment, or have strategies about limiting judgment, and then strategies about limiting overwhelm. Um, and and then there are lots of ways you can sort of do that, but I keep coming back to those. Are you feeling overwhelmed? What can we do to help reduce that overwhelm?
Yeah, and so good that you say that, because we're paying so much attention to, and rightly so, to diet and supplements, and but the things that you know, when I asked you final words of wisdom and you talk about that, you didn't talk about iron or anything else, right? Which is really important, and I hope that we, as a culture, as a species, we start really listening to you and protecting moms, like in some cultures they do. They don't let them work for the first 40 days. They don't even let them hold the baby.
Yeah, well, and it's not so much about listening to me. I think it's much more around um, this idea of, you know, putting mothers back into the very important role that they've always had for many thousands of years, as, you know, the centers of our families, the centers of our communities. And, you know, so many mothers are just struggling out there without really the support or ideas of um, what their role even looks like, let alone you know, having the village to sort of really sort of help them. You know, mothering in the 21st century is a very hard and sometimes very lonely place, and I think very confusing. And so, so, you know, I think for me, the big message that I'm always trying to bring to the front is uh, mothers need to be central in everything that we do, whether it be politics, whether it be education, you know, that idea of
Healthcare.
healthcare, food production, you know, those maternal values, and that idea that because mothers care about everyone more than that they can bear, and that's part of the upgrade that a mother's brain gets, is that they get into this place of being able to feel more than they ever have, which is usually a good thing. But if it's not supported, it can really lead to anxiety, overwhelm, depression, and then you know, not making the best decisions.
Yeah.
And you know, we can't afford as a society to leave our mothers anxious, tired, isolated. You know, everything gets really negatively affected when that happens.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oscar, so nice to see you. I hope to see you in person soon. And
I'll look.
my daughter, this morning you texted me and she said, "Who is that?" I said, "Oscar." And she said, "Is that Olivia's papa?" I said, "Yeah. Tell him to come
Well,
over."
yeah, no, I'll look forward to that play date and look forward to sort of, you know, seeing you in person. But you know, I really admire and love the work that you're doing. I really admire how you're turning up into this space and really helping sort of support people with really useful information and just done with a very free heart. And yeah, it's beautiful. So it's very inspiring, and we're in this together. It's the first time humanity has had a common enemy, and I really like how we're coming together and unifying around that.
Yeah, yeah. It's been within the disaster and the suffering for so many, and it's been a great opportunity. And you know, if it wasn't for the suffering, I would be celebrating, because really things needed to change, and change through politics and policy is so slow, and sometimes goes backwards, right? So I hope we all learn from this, and I hope to see you soon, and send my love to all your beautiful family.
And that love's coming straight back to Alejandro.
Thank you, my brother. See you soon.